Me. This is the Sports Porch, Philadelphia, with your hosts, the Grand Schwabini, Rube, and me, your technical director. Come on, Philly, show us a little Eagles, Flyers, Phillies, and Sixers love. The Philadelphia Sports Porch starts now. All right, sports fans, welcome to the Philadelphia Sports Porch. We are live right now if you're watching all over the world on Facebook, YouTube, X, and of course, we're going to drop this into a podcast right after the show on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get
your bleeping podcast.
And you can always follow the show, the Sports Porch Philadelphia, on YouTube. We encourage you to do that. And one last thing here, if you want to just listen to us, you can listen live on our internet radio stream. Right now, I dropped that link into the comments. So we are back after a 1 week hiatus.
1 week hiatus. We all took the time off to go to the parade.
There you go. There you go. I am here. I'm your technical director. Across from me in the studio is the Grand Schwabini, and coming to us from someplace outside of Austin, Texas, or maybe in Austin, Texas. We didn't get that far because
Round Rock, Texas.
Rock. You know, some people like to ask, specifics about others. Others just kind of,
All right, Rube. Now, please don't hate me just because I voted for the person you don't like the most in the world. Anyway, is the mighty Rube, a lifelong Philly fan living in Texas. Welcome back, guys. So what are we going to do? Obviously, we're going to talk Philly sports. There's a lot to talk about. Schwaber sent me the list. We got more pages this week than I've seen in a long time.
Oh.
So what are we going to do? We're going to talk about the Eagles and their free agents on page 1. A lot to talk about there. Page 2, maybe a little draft discussion. It's a little early, but page 3, of course, the NHL is back after the Four Nations tournament, which surprised me how much good press it got. Page 4, we're going to talk about the Phillies. We're in spring training. I heard Bryce Harper got a tattoo, right?
He did, of the Philly Fanatic.
Page 5, the Sixers.
A little weird.
Woe is me. And then we're going to add a little what we're watching. You guys have that. I'm not going to do that. I'll
okay.
Just, I'll let you guys talk about what you're watching. So let's start right away with page 1. The Eagles free agents. Who are we going to bring back? So what do you guys think?
Well, should we take it one at a time?
Let's do it.
Put some pictures up there.
Let's do it. Absolutely. So we're going to start here with, who does that look like? Well, yes, that is
Zach Bond.
Yeah.
So Rube, for me, this is kind of the number one must resign. Where do you stand on that?
I agree. I think he fits Fangio's system. I think Nakobe Dean, as good as he's improved, is not necessarily very reliable when it comes to durability. And then, listen, if you look at the 2 Super Bowl wins, we had very strong linebacker play. They matter. And we found a winner who fits. So I would agree. I think he's either number 1 or 2.
Right. And especially, too, with the fact that, you don't know if Nakobe's going to be ready for the start of the next season. When Nakobe went out, Zach Bond got the green dot to run the defense, and, they obviously didn't miss a beat. So, he's a playmaking linebacker, and there really aren't a ton of those out there.
Yeah.
In every game in the playoffs, he forced a turnover. So, you got to keep him. I would be shocked if they don't.
Yeah.
Quarterback of the defense, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think this is even up for debate. I mean, they have to re-sign him. The only question is if he's offered something, from a money perspective that he just can't refuse to go somewhere else. But I'm thinking, like, there's going to be a team out there that does that, that's dying for a guy that has his skills. But do you want to risk it? Do you want to risk, unless it's like, let's say the Chiefs do it. Well, well, then that makes sense because he has a shot at another Super Bowl. But if I'm him, they're going to make you a life-changing offer. Right. So stay.
Yeah. Well, the difference is that, he's 28. So it's not like he's one of these, 25-year-old linebackers who's in his prime, who's going to get a massive deal.
Right.
He's going to get a lot of probably like 3-year offers. Maybe like if you give him a 4th year, he stays with you. And I think he's very grateful to the Eagles for kind of saving his career, because he was really just a special teamer, and was kind of like, he's talked about being down and out and like not really loving the game anymore. And he said now that he came to Philadelphia, he loves the game again.
Yeah. So just to throw a little wrench into this conversation, given the success of the Washington Commanders, do we start to see these two teams? Remember, there was a period of time in the 90s and the early 2000s where they would kind of pilfer each other's free agents. Do you remember that? And, end of his career, McNabb,
Art Monk,
Art Monk,
Brian Westbrook,
Brian Mitchell. You got it. So, he's a free agent. The Commanders, first of all, had $80 million under the cap to begin with, and they just increased the cap by like $25 million. So they've got a lot of money to burn, and they need defense. So I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not making a prediction. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised to see the Commanders take it a run at a guy like him with A, the money, and B, we've got the next great quarterback kind of, stance. So they might. I
mean, they're going to be active in free agency.
Right. So,
but is Zach Bond a product, an amazing product of Vic Fangio's D? And is he, can you replace him and put him in somebody else's defense and expect
no idea?
Results?
No idea. Yeah, no idea. I mean, if I'm Zach Bond, I'm unless the money is ridiculous, which I don't think there would be that big of a gap because of what you said. I'm staying with the Eagles. Yeah.
By the way, funny little sidebar. Vic Fangio apparently at the parade pulled the defense together and said, "Hey, 22 points in the second half is unacceptable."
I think it was the day before. Was it the day before the parade or what? Yeah, I mean,
like it
was leading up to the parade. Yeah,
let him enjoy the ring at the moment.
I like it, man. Let's get to work.
Yeah.
No, I say be like the Grand Schwabini and just enjoy it.
Okay, Eagles free agent Zach Bond. I think that's a no-brainer. They got to try to keep him. Next up on the list is a guy who made a big splash in the Super Bowl, and that would be Milton Williams.
Milton Williams.
Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I was not aware really much of Milton Williams' existence until the Super Bowl.
Oh, okay. We haven't been paying attention.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying the big names on the defense, Jalen Carter, Zach Bond, Nakobe Dean.
Well, he did sort of make a name for himself in the playoffs.
Right. Like, that's what I'm saying. The playoff run is when I started to really notice him and go, oh, we got another guy on this line that seems to be really good. So what do you think, Schwaber?
Well, I'll be honest with you. So beyond Zach Bond, he is my number 2 guy that I look at as a must sign. And I don't know that it looks that good because he is like 25 or 26. He is going to get a huge offer from somebody. He kind of plays that second best interior lineman role, just kind of like a Javon Hargrave was to Fletcher Cox. That's what he is to Jalen Carter. And I just think he's really good. And I think he's actually just hitting his peak right now. I'd really like to keep him. I think it's worth even overpaying him at the risk of losing some others that are out there, because I think he's that important. That's just my 2 cents, though.
Gotcha. What do you say, Rube?
I say in terms of what we're going to be able to afford, and assuming that everyone agrees that Zach Bond's number 1, he wouldn't be my number 2 person to keep. So I say he's going to get way too much money, and I'll be pretty consistent with my feedback. I think just about anybody worth their weight, either via draft or free agency, can thrive next to Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and the rest of the team there. So I say go get your money like a Javon Hargrave was. Great call, Schwabi. But I say he's going to walk, and I'd probably let him walk.
It's a mistake, Rube.
All right. I have no opinion on him, which means that I think between Davis and Carter, and that linebacking core, provided they keep on, and the secondary, that you can probably plug and play a guy there. But you're right. I mean, at 25, right? Is he hitting peak? Again, though, is he a product? Was that a product of the guys around him and the system? I don't know, but I have no opinion on him. All right, number 3. Should we keep him or should we let him go? Josh Sweat. Schwaber, your thoughts?
Well, now I know that this is probably Rube's number 2. Am I right, Rube?
No, you're not.
Oh, okay.
Don't know him as well as I thought. Maybe you should ask more questions.
Here's what I think.
Nice.
I think Josh Sweat is the guy that you let go.
Yeah.
And here's why. I mean, the bottom line is he's going to get a huge freaking payday because of his Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
2.5 sacks, 6 tackles, had a good playoffs. He's had, he had 1 year where I think he had 11 sacks. I think this year he had 8 sacks. So he's put up a decent resume. But here's what I would tell you. He got those 2.5 sacks going against a guy playing out of position. Thuney is a guard. And he was forced into playing left tackle because their left tackle went down and couldn't play. So he really beat somebody who was out of position with that great Super Bowl. I just feel like Josh Sweat, while I think he does have a lot of talent, I find that he has disappeared in many a game. I don't feel like he's always contributing. So to me, I feel like, he's a guy that, if you're going to maybe pick a defensive end, or an edge rusher in the draft, high, that you try to maybe replace him with somebody like that. We've got, Nolan Smith out there. And we've got some other guys. So, and I know they'll add somebody. So he's the guy that I would be most okay with letting go. That's just my feeling.
43 career sacks, 7 years in the league. He's 27 years old. It's hard to find guys like him. I mean,
6 sacks a year.
Yeah. Well, his best year was 2022 when he had 11 sacks.
Mm-hmm.
So
2 years ago.
Yeah.
I think he had 8 last year. How many did he have in 2023?
In 2023, he had, I think, 6.5.
Yeah. And between 2023 and the start of 2024, I believe he went something like 9 games without a sack.
Now he did play, since his rookie year where he only played 9 games, he's pretty much played in almost every game every year. He missed 2 games in 2020 and 1 game in 2022 when they went to 17 games. So, and 1 game this past year. So, I mean, he's been consistent.
Yeah,
so I don't know. It's
look,
hard to find edge rushers, and
I would
he's a good one.
I would keep him if they could.
Yeah.
I just don't think that they. To me, it's like I'll take Zach Bond and Milton Williams over Zach Bond and Josh Sweat. Is basically what I'm saying.
I think I would take Zach Bond and Josh Sweat over Zach Bond and Milton Williams,
Okay.
only because it's hard to find good edge rushers, and he's consistent. And that's just where I come down on that.
What are your thoughts on Mr. Sweat? I believe he was your 10th most important Eagle at the start of the year.
One other thing real quick, and I kind of forgot. I'm sorry, Rube. The other thing is I don't think that GMs look at just the Super Bowl. That's what I'm saying. I think when they go and they say, okay, we want this guy on our team, we have to look at his body of work. Yes, he had a great Super Bowl. So that means under pressure, he can play a great game. That's an added bonus. But I don't think 2.5 sacks in the Super Bowl is gonna rocket you from a $50 million contract to a $90 million contract.
Well, for a bad GM, it might. Wants to get a little cachet with their fans.
Yeah.
Look, we're bringing in the Super Bowl star.
Yeah. Well, and it always comes down to, does the guy want the money or does he want to win?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a 50-50 toss-up for most people.
All right.
So,
I think you've said enough on this.
All right. Thank you.
Rube?
Yes, Josh Sweat was on my top 10 of irreplaceable Eagles. I think I even said we get 8 sacks out of him. That's going to be a good year, and that's important coming off the edge. Now, all that being said, he's going to get a ton of money. We don't have a ton of money to spend. I think the money is better spent elsewhere. He's getting a little older. He's got what, 2 Super Bowls with the Eagles now? I think he's like, I got my rings. Now I'm going to go get my final payday and get my money. And oh, by the way, he's the one that said out loud, probably just kidding, he should have been the MVP. I don't see him as a team player. So I say,
Yeah.
thanks for the memories, Josh. I agree with Mark in that there's been times where he would just disappear. As a matter of fact, I was waiting every Monday for the Grand Schwabini to say, hey, where's your top 10 Josh Sweat? He hasn't done anything this week. So
Well,
with all that being said, let him walk and let's spend our money elsewhere.
Good riddance.
I think the lower hanging fruit for the Grand Schwabini was the number 1 most important player, Jake Elliott.
No, let's be clear. He was not number 1. He was number 2.
Oh, whatever.
and he did set a record for most points ever in a Super Bowl.
Is there a better kicker ever in the Super Bowl? The answer is no.
I feel like the pre-show just set me up to get the shit kicked out of me all day. I'm amongst the enemy. Okay, next on the list, a very important cog in that offensive line, Mekhi Becton. He was a project. They switched his position, and he ended up being, should have been a Pro Bowler.
Let's switch it up. Let's have Rube go first this time.
So he's the second guy that I would keep. Listen, offensive line is what has made the Eagles one of the most successful teams over the last 20, 30 years. You get continuity. You have the best running back on earth right now. Why jack with the continuity of your offensive line? The guy, Lane Johnson's getting a little older. I say absolutely try to keep him. Probably he's still young. What is he, 25? So I think he loves being there. I think he's best buddies with Jordan Mailata. I say he's a definitive keep on the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to keep him. I would say, though, I would try to keep him at a little bit of a discounted rate. I would try to kind of go the route of, hey, look, we can't pay you, the absolute top of the ticket here, but, coming here completely turned your football career around. You have the best coach in the world and Jeff Stoutland. We're a seamless, amazing fit on the line. We're going to win here. I would try to get him to take less money to stay. I'm sure you're still going to have to pay him plenty, but, I might try to get him maybe on like a, something like a 4-year, $50 million deal, something like that.
I agree with Rube. I agree that, one of the biggest reasons the Eagles had success this year was Saquon Barkley. And one of the biggest reasons Saquon Barkley had success was they have an incredible offensive line. So now, can they replace him and keep the rest of that line intact and probably have the same dominating performance? Yeah, probably, because he's not the left tackle.
Right. Tyler Steen's pretty good.
Right.
He's not terrible. I mean, he would start on a lot of teams.
Right. But it's not always just plug and play, as the Pittsburgh Steelers have found out. So I think that it's funny. I look at all of these guys, and we got one more guy coming up here. They're all very, very critical in the success on both sides of the ball. Each one of these guys. As far as how critical, if you were to rate them, I would say Bond would be the biggest, and maybe Becton would be third or fourth. So if you got to let him go, there's a lot of right tackles out there. So that's how I feel. All right, next one, last one on the list. This is a guy who's been around for a little while. I think he's a fan favorite, right? Brandon Graham. Rube, go ahead again.
I think it's time for Brandon to retire.
Right.
kind of period hard stop. 2 Super Bowl wins, injured this year. Yeah, 16 years. What is he? The most games ever by an Eagle.
Yep.
I don't see him coming back next year. I think he's going to ride off into the sunset and do radio. Love to have him. Love his trash talking. Love the confidence he gives the team, but he can do that in other ways.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think he's probably going to retire, so it's not really going to be a conversation. I mean, I think, in recent years, what they've done is they brought him back kind of knowing that he would play a reduced role, and they're really just having him there for leadership purposes. And, they're paying him like, $4 or $5, $6 million. I mean, I just don't think you can give him that much money. I mean, if he really wanted to come back to play, and be willing to do it for like $2 or $3 million, I'd consider it. But I think at this point, he just doesn't really bring enough.
Yeah, I agree. He's 36. He's actually going to be 37 in April.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got 2 Super Bowls under his belt now.
Right.
2 victories anyway. And I think great Eagle, great player. Probably if I'm him, I'm retiring, but you never know.
Yeah.
These guys, he could get a 1 year prove it to me deal or leadership deal with some other team. Of all the people we've talked about, of all the players we've just talked about, I don't see him ever putting on a different uniform.
Probably not.
But you never know. I mean, what if the Browns offer him $10 million to come for a year?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. I mean, that would be.
Now, Steve actually brings up there are some others out there. It's not, these are the most important ones, but Steve brings up Avonte Maddox.
Yeah.
Would you bring back Avonte Maddox, Rube?
No, I think we need to continue to get young in the defensive backfield. And aside from, a play or two in the playoffs and obviously the big one in the Super Bowl, he was already on the chopping block. If I had to go pick one of the guys that's out there that no one's talking about, I'd love to have Kenny Gainwell back. He's a free agent.
Yeah.
So I think I'd rather spend the money on him.
Now, one other guy that I think is important to mention is, Darius Slay. He's one of those guys where, he's making over $10 million a year. He could very easily be a cap casualty to free up space, because you now have Quinyon Mitchell, and then you could put Cooper DeJean outside, and you've got your 2 starting corners, and then you've got a whole bunch of kind of like, second, third round picks in guys like, Ringo and Ringo, I think, was a 4th round pick. There's Eli Ricks out there. They've got some other guys, and of course they could always draft somebody. I guess the question is, do you bring back Slay for 1 more year? He says he wants to play 1 more year.
Oh, I thought he said he was going to retire.
No, he said he wants to play 1 more year.
Oh,
and he said if he does, he said he would prefer it to be with the Eagles, or if the Eagles can't make it work, he said then he would want to finish in Detroit, where he started. So what do you think? Would you bring back Slay for 1 more year?
Is he a free agent?
He's not a free agent. So you could just bring him back. But, the idea here is, obviously his age, you've got his replacement, already playing probably at a Pro Bowl level on the field. And, by cutting him, you can free up a lot of money.
I like having him there because I like where we played DeJean this year. I mean, why does he need to go play cornerback? He was amazing as whatever role he was playing, whether it was a rover. I don't know what position that was.
He was playing slot corner.
He was slot.
Okay, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Run him back, and you just keep a couple of these backups, because Slay will play like 2 quarters of half a game. He'll get hurt, but he can still play. Clearly, he can still play. So. But do you save that money and replace the defensive line?
Or maybe they restructure
Yeah, it could be a restructure thing.
I would love to have him back, but I don't know if I want to pay him $10 million to have him back.
Right, and I think that's what the Eagles will probably do. They'll probably go to him and say, "Let's restructure this deal, make it a little more cap friendly. We want to keep you around, and we would rather not cut you and have you go to Detroit because." Potentially, and we'll get to this later down the line, potentially that could be an NFC championship matchup.
That's true. That's true. Yep.
So I think the last place the Eagles want him to finish his career is Detroit. I would be surprised if they let him go. Now, if they cut him, I guess.
Yeah. Now, one more thing that Steve brought up that I do think we should bring up, I didn't have in my notes. That tells you just how much I've thought about this.
Yeah, right.
Is Rube? What are your thoughts on Kevin Patullo as the new Eagles offensive coordinator?
Don't know much about him, to be honest with you. So he's as good as Brian Johnson was. I don't know. Good pedigree, good background. Has obviously been with Sirianni for a while, has been around Kellen Moore. I like staying in house for this, even though it didn't work so well the last time we did it. But you've got a bunch of veterans coming off a Super Bowl win. I don't know. I'd say it's the right choice. I like being in house. I don't know what kind of offensive coordinator he's going to be honest with you.
Well, we'll find out, because as the offseason goes on, you're going to hear more and more interviews with him.
Right.
You're going to hear what the players think. I think the important thing that any coordinator in his position coming in is to look back and say, well, last year was a success. So let's not put our ego in front of what worked and say, I'm going to change this or change that. I mean, there's always things that you can look at and improve on. But I think you look at that offense and say, we're going to run with what worked. But you never know with coordinators.
No pun intended either. Right. But everything that you hear from inside the building is everyone's like, love it. He can do it. He's been around. He's a player's coach, yada, yada, yada. We'll see. And here's the other thing I would say is Sirianni's a couple more years experience, right? He's maturing as a coach and perhaps now he's more prepared to have a younger coordinator that he can bring along.
Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently this was Sirianni's choice. So they decided to listen to Sirianni. Apparently he's his right-hand man that he basically goes over everything with. And apparently he is not a yes man, that he will tell Sirianni when he thinks he's wrong or he thinks there's a better way. So those things are positives. But I also agree that the reality is got to really just wait and see. It's not easy to call plays in the NFL.
No,
it's not.
No.
So
it's not easy to call plays on Madden. So
no.
You can imagine what it would be like in the NFL. All right, you're watching.
That's pretty close. Yeah.
That's
close.
You're watching the Sports Philadelphia on Facebook, YouTube, and X. And of course, if you're listening to the podcast, you're listening on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you get your friggin' podcasts. And we encourage you to hop on over to YouTube if you're not watching there. Follow us at Philadelphia Sports Porch on YouTube. All right, page 2. I mean, are we going to have a long conversation about this right now? The draft, what positions? It's so early, and
combines this week.
Let's just go with if there's three positions you'd like them to walk out with the first 3 picks. What positions would those be?
Sure, I'll start. Gunner, kicker, and
snapper.
and
that's why you have no future in the NFL.
No, I mean,
none.
At 54, I don't expect to.
Yeah.
So,
but you couldn't even if you wanted to.
So, no, my real 2 cents right now, before we get into the combine and get more down the mock draft list, is that when I look at the Eagles top to bottom this year, especially in the last part of the year, do I see a place of need that they could solve with the draft? I would say maybe linebacker, especially if they don't bring back Zach Bond. They're pretty set everywhere else as far as I'm concerned. Maybe safety. But that's all I got right now until we get a little further down the line and there's more, what's going to
right.
available.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Part of what you're saying is, well, yeah, if there's no Zach Bond, then we need a linebacker. If there's no Mekhi Becton, then we might need an offensive lineman.
Exactly.
But I would say just assuming what we have now is what we'll have, so everybody's back.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think we need a top round one or round two tight end, because Dallas Goedert is hurt every year.
Right.
And you eventually want to think about replacing him.
You don't think the Barracuda guy is Calcaterra? I mean,
Calcaterra?
Yeah.
No, I like Calcaterra, but he's not a great blocker.
Yeah.
So, he doesn't add to the offensive line the way Goddard does. And I also think they could use, this would be 100% this if Kenny Gainwell's not back. But even if he is back, I also think they could use like a round 3 or round 4 running back. Somebody to take carries away from Saquon Barkley so we don't, overexert him during the regular season next year. So those are some of my thoughts. What do you think, Rube?
I'm assuming we're going to lose one or two of the defensive ends and edge rushers. So I would go defensive end or edge rush as one. I'd try to see if I could find Lane Johnson's replacement, because he's probably only got a year or two left on the offensive line. And it's funny, we think alike. I have tight end third on my list, because of exactly what you just said. Durability of Goddard, who's getting up there in age. So those would be my top 3. I agree. If we lose Gainwell, we need a running back. Wouldn't hurt to have a safety, and gosh, it would be kind of cool to get a wide receiver 3, because Jahan Dotson, as wonderful as he played in the Super Bowl, I don't think is the right long-term answer.
Although, you know what, though, I kind of think Jahan Dotson, I might be okay just leaving him there at the 3. It does take a little while to fit yourself into a new team, especially when you've got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith demanding the ball, right? I think in the playoffs, he played well. He had a touchdown against, was it the Packers or LA? One of them. And then he almost had a touchdown in the Super Bowl, made a couple other catches. Maybe he's, just starting to sort of fit in, and Jalen's starting to feel comfortable with him. Maybe he'll have a good year, with a full off season.
Yeah, listen, I have him way down my list, but I'd go defensive end, O-line, specifically right tackle. That's what Johnson plays, right? And definitely we need the tight end of the future.
I think that it actually, when you look at Saquon Barkley, he's 28. We have to assume that he's not going to have as good a year next year as he had this year, only because he rushed for 2,000 yards.
Well, and more yards than anybody ever, including the playoffs.
Right. So, and his age is a factor. I mean, he's going to be 28 for all of next season. But I think you do need to start planning for, dare I say it, life without Saquon Barkley. So I would put running back on that list. And the other side of it is, looking at his career, he doesn't really have an injury history. He had that, 2020, he was out pretty much the whole year. Other than that, he's played the majority of the games every single year. He's just been the victim of a couple years being a very, very bad Giants team and offensive line. So there's a wall that these guys hit at some point, and I don't care if you're Saquon Barkley, Eric Dickerson, or Trent Richards.
Yeah, I mean,
what about Sean Alexander? Don't forget to say what about.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not predicting it. Right. I'm just saying you have to look at it and say this is. Yeah, he could hit that wall next year. Yeah, probably not.
It's more likely than not that he will lose something when he gets to 30.
Right.
But there's also Derrick Henry out there who doesn't seem to lose anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's in his mid-30s, isn't he?
I don't know. I don't think he's that old, but I will find out for you here in just 1 second.
Listen, Saquon, as long as he stays healthy, no one takes better care of their body, right? So they didn't think that Brady could play into his 40s or whomever and still win Super Bowls. But, I think we got a couple years left to Saquon. What I want, though, is an RB2 or an RB3 that we can find late that can spell him.
31. Derrick Henry is
okay. So he's still playing at a really high level.
Yeah,
3 years later.
Only 1 year. Now this is incredible. Only 1 year did he miss more than one game. In 2021, he only played 8 games, and he did rush for 937 yards. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean he's a workhorse, no doubt about it.
All right.
But yeah, he's the exception to the rule. Do we think that Saquon's going to be I don't think so. Saquon's not built like Henry. Henry's like a Mack truck. Saquon is a little bit more of a finesse kind of guy. I mean, he's got power, but Henry is a very large man.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, okay.
All right. What's next?
What's next is a little highlight action we got here.
Swing to Michkov. Michkov with Tippett. Michkov the shot. It went off of Skinner White. The rebound. He scored! Matvey Michkov back from the break and on the board. It's 1-0 Philadelphia.
There it is. Michkov Mania. The Four Nations tournament is over, and it's time to resume the NHL season. Do you guys think the Four Nations tournament is going to bring any more say fans into the fray in the NHL? Do you think it's going to make an impact? I mean, I'll tell you this one. There's one little anecdote. I work down at Trader Joe's near us, and there were people there who I did not even realize actually knew what hockey was, let alone being hockey fans, that all of a sudden are talking about this tournament. Which was odd, because before that I never had a hockey conversation with anybody other than a diehard hockey fan, of which there were a couple there in this entire last whole year. So it might have piqued a little interest in the game.
Yeah, it might have piqued some interest, but what you're hearing a lot of on talk radio since the Four Nations is just how bad regular NHL hockey is now that they started back up again.
Well, I mean, not every team has the best players in their country.
Right.
I mean, that's really...
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I thought the tournament was fun. It was great hockey. At the same time, it's one of those things where if you do it every year, then I think it loses its it loses its shine. Yeah. And the other part of it too is there's some really good teams that have players out for the year now because they got hurt in this tournament.
That's always a tough part,
which would have really annoyed me if it was my team and they were in a great position.
Yeah.
But the thing we were talking about with Michkov was that he had already played more games than he's ever played in a season.
Right.
And I think the break, the 2.5 week break or whatever it was really good for him. He came out really energized. He had a 3-point game. They're basically saying that the announcers I was listening to said it was his best game of the season.
Right.
So I think that's a real positive. Steve says the excitement will fade because of the lack of talent like Michkov. So he says he doesn't have enough to work with.
Well, he's talking about hockey, period. Not everybody has a Michkov.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha.
So, yeah.
So, Rube, did you get a chance to watch the game? I know you have the Plus channel.
Yeah, so I think first thing on the question about the Four Nations thing was shocking. How, it drew 10 million. It drew a huge rating and 10 million fan. A lot of it was probably because of the whole patriotism angle and the fights and all that. But listen, I would watch the NHL 7 days a week and twice on Sunday before I ever watch the NBA, whose ratings are really going to shit. So, to me, as a lifelong hockey fan, I love that it got the exposure and I hope it continues. But there's so much for it to compete with. I just don't know if we're ever going to get there as a country.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rube.
Yeah. So no, go ahead, Chris. That was kind of my feeling on the Four Nations. I loved that people tuned in.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was cool because there was a lot of passion around it. I mean, if you break it down into its simplest form, it was basically an all-star tournament. with 4 countries,
but with people that cared,
right? And they cared and they wanted to win, and that was really the criticism that was being thrown from that towards the NBA, towards the NFL, and the whole Pro Bowl disaster thing. And it's kind of, and in this day and age where the money is so huge for NBA players, Major League Baseball players, and NFL players. Now in hockey, they make a pretty nice living, but they don't make the kind of living that these guys make. And in hockey, you leave it all out on the ice. I mean, you can't go through the motions on the ice. You either play or you don't.
Right. You can't fake it like basketball.
Right. I mean, you can get injured. I think hockey is one of those sports where if you kind of softball it, to use a different sport, you stand a greater chance of getting injured than if you actually play the game, So I think that hockey, though, is a very, very, very niche sport. And if you're a hockey fan, you're part of a group of people that, or you're either a hockey fan or you're not. I don't know anyone, and I'm sure they're out there who
they're
is
a casual
exactly,
fan. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I tune in once in a while, and like, man, if they out here in Pittsburgh, if the Penguins make the playoffs, then I watch every game. No, but when it comes to baseball, I don't live where my beloved Baltimore Orioles play, so I rarely see regular season games. But if they make the playoffs, I'm watching, because I'm still there, even though I can't catch every game. So I think all this talk about that was just food for talk radio fodder. Fodder for talk radio.
Fodder.
There's just so much. There's so many things to try to win eyeballs, whether it's Netflix or other sports or MLS now is getting huge, or whatever it is. I just think I would love to see it with hockey, but I would agree. You either like it or you don't. And it's really difficult to try to convince someone otherwise.
Yeah, the funny thing is I actually do like hockey. Not being it now, I grew up in an area where there wasn't a hockey team very close, and in York, you had the Capitals down in off the Beltway, and they were always terrible before they got Ovi, and then of course you had the Flyers down the Turnpike. I grew up more of a Flyers fan. I enjoyed the idea of them winning, and to be honest with you, until I met our other co-hosts, Hockey Jesus, I had actually never heard of the Pittsburgh Penguins. and the team that I grew up watching when we would go see a hockey game, and we did go see quite a few when I was a kid, were the Hershey Bears. And but the thing about it was, to me, going to a hockey game is the experience.
Right.
If somebody 100%. Says I got tickets to the game, I will go, because that is worth watching. But on 100%. television, to me, now you guys are fans, so you guys can watch the game on TV and thoroughly enjoy it. I find it to be very hard, because it's one of those things you have to, this goes right to the niche thing. You got to dedicate yourself to watching hockey games over and over and over until you get to the point where now the speed of the game, it slows down, and on the television, you're in it, you're watching.
Well, it is hard to see.
Right.
I mean, especially when a goal goes off a skate or goes off a stick.
Yeah.
It's hard. It is hard to see. I mean, you basically, sometimes you can't tell who scored the goal until they do the slow-mo replay.
Right. And remember the days like 20 years ago where they tried to like illuminate the puck.
Right. Yeah. I do remember that. Yeah.
I was interested enough where I was like, ooh, maybe this will make me want to watch it. It was so distracting that I was just like, I can't even watch this.
It's a great topic, though. Maybe like in some dead time for us, maybe we'll bring Hockey Jesus on to talk about it. But I wonder, if you were president, if you were commissioner of the NHL, what would you do? Do you think they're making the right moves with the Four Nations? What about the outdoor series? I mean, they draw 100,000 people. So, what would you do differently? Would you start the season? Same thing with the NBA. The NBA is in big trouble. What would you do to save the NBA? Maybe some future topics, boys.
Yeah, I think we should do that. So, but here's to Michkov coming back strong. Looking for a good rest of the year. Page 4, if you're watching the Sports Porch Philadelphia live on Facebook, X, and YouTube. And of course, if you want to catch up, subscribe to the podcast on the Apple Podcast app, iHeartRadio app, or anywhere you get your friggin' podcasts, and subscribe to us at Philadelphia Sports Porch on YouTube. We would love that. We're trying to brand new channel. We're trying to grow it. Please subscribe. It'll never cost anything. Let's go to the Phillies. It's spring training. Bryce Harper got a Philly Fanatic tattoo.
It's a little weird.
Do you think he'll be sorry about that when he's like 65?
I guess he's kind of goofy.
If he leaves and goes to play for another team, I mean, I know this is fantasy land, but does he get it removed? Does he go through the pain of the laser removal?
I don't think so.
Do they let him? I mean, let's say the Yankees get him. Are they like, look, you can have your beard, but you can't have the Fanatic tattoo? I mean, anyway, so Phillies, what's your win total? What I am concerned about the Phillies this year. I'm just going to throw this out there. It's based on nothing other than my heart.
Your gut.
Well, not so much my gut. It's right now it's my heart. I feel like the idea of the Phillies winning the East and making a run at the World Series is stale. Do you get my drift? I'm not saying
you're just saying you think that they had their opportunities and they blow it.
You think the window is closed?
I don't want to say closed, but I would definitely say it's not open as wide as it was the last 3 years. I feel that, there's not a real spark on this team. There's nobody that they brought in. And if they get off to a poor start, that's going to set the tone. I think the first 10 to 15 games this year will set the tone for the whole year. So if they go 10-5 or 12-3, okay. If they go 6-9, or something worse, we could be in trouble. What do you guys think?
I'll let you take it, Rube.
I'm going to go Posidelphia here, technical director.
Okay. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just saying like my spirit.
No, I understand what you're saying. You're like, man, it was electric for 3 years and we've gone down and to the right? From World Series to champion, to losing in division. Listen, I think as long as you have a top-notch pitching staff, which we do, we've revamped the bullpen a little bit. You're going to win 90 games as long as everybody stays healthy. So my total is 91 wins, maybe as a wild card team. I also think that maybe the Eagles winning takes a little of the pressure off of the Phillies. We're not gripping the bat as tight. We got a title in the town. Fans are really excited, and maybe we start playing loose again. But listen, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, can we avoid the long cold streak? Now, technical director, you're right. They were not a good team. They were a 500 team in the second half of the season, and obviously we flamed out in the playoffs. I think what they're thinking in their dugout is now everybody is thinking the Mets with Soto and the Braves are getting healthy with Acuna and the Dodgers, picked up every free agent on earth. Maybe this is the year we kind of sneak up on teams again. And I'd love to see them run it back this year and finally do it. And I think they can.
So you're predicting 90 wins, or did you say
91 wins?
Okay. Schwaber.
I'm going to go with 93 wins. I think the pitching is even better because they got a really good fifth starter now. And that's not even counting Andrew Painter, who will probably be up in the second half. Somebody will probably get injured. So the starting pitching's as good as it's ever been. To me, the things to be concerned about are, we'll see how this guy from the Blue Jays does. I guess he's coming off an injury, but I still don't like kind of not really having that definitive closer. But that could be something that could be addressed at a trade deadline. I still don't like the fact that I would have liked to have seen them make maybe one or two changes in the lineup better than a Max Kepler, right? I mean, I think they could use somebody who just hits more for average, right? And doesn't swing and miss at everything. But I think what they're trying to do, I don't know if you've heard this, Rube, but it seems like the consensus is that this year they're going to go with a lineup. They're going to have Trey Turner lead off, Bryson Stott hit second, Harper third, and Schwarber fourth or fifth. And I think that the idea there is to get Trey Turner thinking less about home runs and more about getting on base and stealing bases. That is the kind of player that Bryson Stott is. Apparently he played all last year with a bad elbow. So his kind of average year last year, we'll see. We'll see if was it because of his elbow or was it because he did just stink last year? We'll see.
Are they all lefties? Did everyone you just named, is that all left-handed hitters?
No, Trey Turner's a righty, and then
Trey Turner's a righty. Okay.
Yeah, and you can throw Bohm in there as a righty.
Okay.
Right. So I think that the bottom line is I think I'm kind of looking at it like you're looking at it. This is sort of how the Dodgers kind of looked at it. Like the Dodgers had been in the playoffs for like 5 straight years, and maybe 3 of those 5 years they lost in the first round. But, you just keep getting there. You keep getting there. Eventually the breaks fall your way and you win one, So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I also look at it and I say, I'm not 100% thinking that the team can do it at this moment. But I also think if Dombrowski finally does go out and make that big trade deadline deal or two, like if we get a good right-handed power bat at the deadline and a closer at the deadline, something like that could push us over the edge. So I think it's within possibility to win the World Series. I probably wouldn't bet on it, but I do think that they'll make it back to the playoffs.
Okay. So you're saying 93 wins.
93 wins.
Yeah, I continue to believe that the Mets are just like the Jets, but with one different letter in the beginning of their name, and they're cursed. And I know Juan Soto hit a home run in his first spring training at bat. What I love is that Mets fans feel like that is just a prediction for a World Series when it's really just one swing.
Right.
But that being said,
hopes are high in New York. Yeah,
I know, but they're always high in New York for many reasons other than just signing Juan Soto. I have to believe that Juan Soto's bat in their lineup is going to give them a few more wins just because if he
would think,
well, if he doesn't, if the money doesn't go to his head, which is, hey, look, man, I don't care who you are. Somebody plops 700 million guaranteed into your lap, which is, around 350 million after all the taxes you have to pay, but it's still a ton of money. Where is your motivation anymore? I mean, I get it. I mean, but it's not the way it used to be. So these kinds of contracts can end up really hurting teams. And some of them have, look at Cleveland and Deshaun Watson. Of course, Juan Soto is not nearly the, monster that Watson.
Right. But it happens all the time.
But I guess
A-Rod, A-Rod had the original 250 million, didn't do anything.
Right. Who's, and then you had Nolan Arenado really didn't work out.
Right. Right.
Now
I'm not predicting.
He's a great player. He's a great player.
He is.
I'm not predicting anything other than I think it's also very possible in that intense rivalry, even if the Mets are not having a great year, in that intense rivalry, Soto may make the difference in some of those games. Getting a little technical, just trying to bring it. I don't want to go Negadelphia, but I just feel like that window is closing. I feel like the Dodgers are
just getting better,
basically unbeatable, at this point. I mean, we were in Philly for the cheesesteak thing, watching Freddie Freeman crush the ball.
Yeah,
that was one of the greatest baseball games I've ever watched. Was it not?
Was, yeah.
Just
was that the Grand Slam?
The Grand Slam. Yeah, we've been out eating cheesesteaks all day. You want to talk about a great day? I mean, it would have been better if the Phillies were playing.
Right.
But we're out all day long, running around Philly, running around New Jersey, eating cheesesteaks with people, having a great time. time. We get back to the hotel and it's like, oh, wait, this game's on. And we watch Freddie Freeman crush a grand slam, to win.
That was epic. That was the natural in real life.
Yeah, we were watching it live. Yeah. So anyway, my point is I'm thinking they're going to be under 90 wins. I'm thinking it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood. I'll just give it a number. I'll say 88. Possible wild card there, but very disappointing. Topper his message is started. I think it's not the players. I think it's more the message from the coach. That's me. Season hasn't even started.
Yeah.
We only a couple days into spring training. Maybe I change my tune later down the line. All right. Next up, here we are. Page 5. Things are getting better and better for Philadelphia.
The debacle.
Here. Oh, and one last thing, Rube, going back to what you said about maybe the Phillies are they feel a little less pressure because there's a title in the town. I disagree. I think the other team, the other major sports team, I think they feel more pressure because, the Eagles delivered a Super Bowl. So we've gotten close the last couple of years. Now everybody's going to look at us and say it's your term. So I'm just going to leave it at that. The Sixers this year, not good. Should they shut it down?
Really bad.
I already know what Rube's answer is.
Yeah. I think the worst part of all of it is that, from what I'm understanding from people who are in the know, is that Joel Embiid's knee is never going to get better.
I think that's obvious.
So I think that the reality is that this is over. I mean, they're probably going to shut him down and he's going to get like some experimental surgery. And basically, he's praying for a miracle, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's over. And unfortunately, he was just the big man who was always hurt. And it's a shame.
Yep.
There he is.
Poor Joel Embiid. He's so damn rich. He doesn't ever have to play basketball again if he doesn't want to.
He'll drink Shirley Temples the rest of his days.
There you go. Rube, shutting it down. Time to call it.
I mean, I hate to say I saw it coming, but I think we all saw it coming.
But you will say I told you so, though, right?
Well, listen, it was one of the best predictions of my life. I got to stick with it. And it's likely going to come true. So, yeah, it's a shame. I'd like to see them shut everything down. Let's protect our top 6 pick that we got. And maybe if you shut George and Embiid down and just say, guys, go get the surgery you need, go recover, go get your win back, and we're going to take a run with Maxey and McCain next year, and that's going to be it. It's going to be like the last dance type of thing, and see what we can do. Otherwise, again, you just the process is over, and you got to start over again.
Yeah, so, I mean,
it's time for a new process.
You're 56. You're 56 games into the season. You're 20 plus games back. You've lost 7 in a row.
It's over.
You know what? It's actually just hilarious, Rube. I mean, when you look at the box score, right, and you just see Embiid, George, and Maxey in the Sixers box score, and then you look on the other team's box score, and we watch a decent amount of NBA, and we barely know one guy on the other team, and they're beating us. It's just like it almost just doesn't even compute. It's like how in the world could this happen?
It's kind of, that's kind of, I don't know, it's very existential. Or you think about it, like in our lives, we've seen some pretty good basketball, and we're living under, in the old days of you need your 3 stars and da-da-da-da-da. And somehow or another, all these other teams have figured out how to go get young and get the new stars. And what the Sixers have consistently done is they got lots of money to go spend, and they go spend it on a guy like Paul George. And
Harden.
Or Harden, and you just don't get it. You got to go get young guys, just like the Eagles did. You got to draft well, develop them, and you have your mix of old and new and hope. But listen, no one was going to win with Embiid this year anyway. He was hurt. He's hurt. You have no chance to win the title.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we're probably just going to be singing this song for the last 20-some games of the year.
Well, we hope that they shut him and George down and we make a run at the lottery.
Yeah, maybe.
Make a run.
Tankadelphia.
And actually, Rube, I hear the number 2 guy in the draft is going to be pretty good too. I'm not sure. I can't remember the name, but the number 2 guy is supposed to be really good as well.
The guy from Auburn?
Or is he from Rutgers?
No, I think the guy, Johnny Broom, I forget his name, but
I do know about the guy from Rutgers. The guy from Auburn, he's supposed to be in the top 5. He's supposed to be good.
All right. Well, there you have it. Yep. Last page of the evening, something we're going to throw out here, a little twist during the dead zone. Page 6, what we are watching. What this is Schwaber.
What this is you, the fans, the listening audience, the viewers. It's a hard thing trying to find the right show to pick. And we feel your pain. And we're here for you. We're here to help, lend a helping hand. And, there's Netflix, there's Amazon Prime, there is Hulu, there is Apple TV Plus, there is Max. The list just goes on and on. What do you choose? Do you ever find yourself trying to find a show for 45 minutes and then, no time to watch a show, time to go to bed, got to go to work tomorrow? Not if you listen to our show. We will tell you either what to watch or what not to watch because we are the experts.
That was really good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I actually stayed awake for that. Yeah. All right. This week we're going to start with Rube. Rube is watching something called, I gotta find it here. This has made me curious, so I'm
a little curious. It seems like a very odd cast, doesn't it?
What is it, Rube?
It's a terrific cast, actually. It's in season 2. Jason Segel from How I Met Your Mother, and obviously Harrison Ford.
Shrinking
from Star Wars.
Yeah, from
they're shrinking. They're psychologists or psychiatrists, and it tells about their unorthodox ways of helping their patients. But the cast is phenomenal, and it's less about kind of the psychology with their patients. It's more about their friendships and what's happening around them. The premise of the show is that Jason Segel loses his wife to a car accident. And this is essentially how people rally and his friends rally around him, and he gets his life back on track to help others. And it's funny. It's actually really funny, laugh out loud banter, and it's heartwarming. And it's got a little something for everybody. So absolutely love it. In season 2, season 1, it's every good as season 1.
Shrinking.
Okay.
Season 2 on Apple TV Plus. Schwaber, you are watching
The Night Agent
on Netflix.
Yep. I used this on our other show last week, but I figured I'd bring this crowd into The Night Agent. Have you seen The Night Agent, Rube?
I have. But quite frankly, I think season 1 was far superior than season 2.
Well, I kind of agree with you. I thought that season 1 was definitely better than season 2. The issue with season 2 is season 2 had a very rocky beginning. Like the first 3 episodes, it was kind of like, what's even going on here, But I would say from like episode 4 through 8, I think if it was 8 or 10, 4 through 8 or 10, whatever it was really good. Really picked up. So I would still say that season 2 was a positive. So they had a little bump in the road, kind of, I think, transitioning from 1 to 2 in terms of the seasons, but thoroughly enjoyable. I mean, look, it's spy stuff. I like anything that's, spy related. Just good fun. I mean, it's nothing, it's not like one of those where you're going to say this is award winning and and it's the best show ever. But it's something that, you know, you can sit there for an hour and be thoroughly entertained, never look at your watch to see what time it is, and leave feeling like you were fulfilled.
I started watching The Night Agent a little, I want to say a couple weeks ago.
Season 2 or 1?
1. Actually, I think it was after you did it on our show.
Oh, okay.
My wife and I started watching it because we were looking for something at night.
Mm-hmm.
And she fell asleep during the first episode. So I didn't finish it.
Yeah.
I was intrigued by it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one episode. It just, for whatever reason, didn't push all of it.
The idea of the Night Agent
into this.
No, I'm just
Right.
just saying.
Could you drug her? Was there wine? Was there
No, she just fell asleep. So
and a mound of potato chips.
I know, probably, yeah, and chocolate everywhere, all over the bed.
Right.
But yeah, so I thought it was good. I'm in the middle of watching 2 other things right now that when I finish, I'm going to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
So
good for you.
The Night Agent it's just speaking of my selfish watching phase. I'm just telling you, I'm gonna give it a whirl, because
there you go.
I'm not as selfish a watcher as you thought. All right. Follow the Sports Porch Philadelphia podcast on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, or anywhere you get your friggin' podcasts. And please hop on over to YouTube at Philadelphia Sports Porch and give us a little follow there. For the technical director, the Grant Schwabini and Rube down in Austin, or Red Rock or Rock Grove or whatever.
Round Rock.
Okay, it's kind of like Indiana Township. I'm your technical director. We'll catch you next week. I am out.